Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, guys, we just wanted to start by saying, look at how they're getting you used to seeing a Draco over here. But Cindy was saying the colors aren't right. The Draco don't look quite so lively.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually very beautiful colors, but no, when I look at them, I see this deep, murky green. And as far as the other ones, the elders being white, that definitely feels correct. And their energy and their smell is quite bad.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, don't want to offend any Draco that are
No,
listening in out
no.
there. Before we get going, just want to, again, ask everybody, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't, or double check, make sure you're subscribed to Evolutionary Energy Arts and also to EEARTS, as we have different videos on both channels on a regular basis. Try to get a video out on both channels every day as much as possible. So I just thought this was cute, and I was intending to talk about it, and Cindy was like, we should talk about that. I mean, we've had some really interesting things pop up on this Brave browser.
Yeah, I mean, lately they just seem to be various kinds of gods,
Or yeah, quote unquote, again, and we'll be going more into that. So we wanted to talk more about something that was fascinating that came up from the guides last night, and something that's really been, well, it would be perplexing, I think, for almost all of us. Maybe some very, very enlightened beings already have a grasp on the fractal nature of consciousness. And again, there is one source out of which everything comes, and that source, according to the Tao Te Ching, is something you cannot even name or describe, because as soon as you name it, you've got something that's limited. And it's unlimited, and it includes everything that ever was, has been, is, and will be, and even things that haven't even been conceived of yet.
Like, there's a lot of information inside of us that isn't even really translatable. It's information that we have to sit with, meditate on, focus on, and allow that to come to the surface. And moving into this photon belt, as we move into more light, and light is information, more and more of this information will be able to bubble up and make itself known and bring us deeper understanding, because I think that's what we're lacking. We're lacking a lot of understanding and knowledge about how everything truly works.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, and a lot of this stuff we're not supposed to know, because it could take from the current incarnation, and learning and experiencing things in an organic way. Yet in other time periods, and we talk about the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age. Yuga just means age. And in other ages, like the Satya, which is the Golden Age, we can access information that we can't necessarily access in the Dark Age. Of course, there's always exceptions. There's always certain yogis or monks and enlightened beings that can achieve ascension at any time, that can access, hidden knowledge and actually achieve amazing things like bilocation, having abilities like telepathy and clairvoyance, clairaudience, all this at any time period, whether it's a dark age or not. So there are always exceptions. But as far as like the mass of humanity and what's commonly known, right now we're just starting to go out of this dark age. And we've talked about the idea of an avatar. And we've talked about, really what we've talked about is transmigration of the soul, in that the soul moves from existence to existence in an eternal dance with manifestation.
Mm-hmm. Right, and our ability to pull in the experiences we wish to enhance our knowledge on. I think a lot of people right now are going through a time period where they're finding so many different interests, they can't really focus on one. They might be getting curious or deeper into certain understandings of maybe tarot, maybe astrology, maybe the stars, maybe Mother Earth. And what's going on is through ascension, our bodies are remembering who we were. And as we awaken, more and more information comes in, and it can actually be quite exhausting. Trying to chase around all your different interests that are going on that you've had in other lifetimes right now.
So when we talk about beings like the devas, like a Vishnu here, and what we have gotten is that, and again, other people might call Vishnu a different name. He's the name. That's the name that we got from the being that is the creator of this universe. And the creator of this universe is not necessarily the creator of a different universe. Again, we live in a multiverse. There's all sorts of universes and creations out there. And that's really our destiny. That's really everybody's destiny at some point in time, because we are all creators. We all have source in us. We are all creators. That's what we're all about. And, it's kind of like we have our training wheels on right now.
Yeah, we
so
do.
to speak.
Very much so. And a lot of the tempting things out there that are inorganic that we can do in an organic nature are out there tempting us to take away our ability to exercise these organic gifts. AI is very tricky in the sense of, okay, we'll just put in a chip and you'll be able to read each other's thoughts. Well, guess what? Organically, you don't need to put a chip that's controlled by somebody else in your head, because we can already read each other's thoughts. We already feel each other's emotions. And that's becoming more and more evident. If you are having a happy emotion, a sad emotion, sit with that for a minute. And is that really yours, or have you stepped into someone else's emotional outburst, whether they were really happy or really sad? Have you ever had a bad emotion just kind of sweep over you in just a moment's notice? Our brains are trying to make sense of these emotions, so we might try to tie that emotion to one of our own experiences, when in reality, we're feeling someone else.
Absolutely. And so this is really a good thing to bring up at this point in time. And quantum entanglement, because it makes perfect sense. Again, that as above, so below is so accurate. And it's on all different levels. That's the thing that's mind-blowing. People can't necessarily conceive. When we've been given such a simplistic point of view in our religious traditions, God, somebody, a singular being created this world and us in a certain time period. And, you get the picture of the guy on the cloud, and, he took an incarnation as a certain individual and is going to come back and going to rule for 1,000 years and all that. It's, again, it's so overly simplistic compared to what reality really is. And yet reality is so much more beautiful than all that. I mean, it's just so much, it's so breathtakingly beautiful and amazing. And it's something that shouldn't be feared. So, when we talk about quantum entanglement, it's at the heart of quantum physics and future quantum technologies. So we're talking about the smallest bits of matter that we can't see. At some point in time, they say there was a Big Bang. Before the Big Bang, everything was condensed into a tiny singularity. And then, boom, it explodes outwards. So why does entanglement exist? Why do we get what they call spooky action at a distance? Or Einstein used to talk about that, because he didn't like quantum physics because it made things spooky. That was his word. It's like it kind of made things even more complex. And of course, this is one of the most brilliant people to walk the planet, along with Tesla and Max Planck and so many others. Well, when you have this phenomenon that arises and we start to recognize that it's really all about the observer creating reality, because what we have is this just a potential that doesn't take a form until it's actually looked at and noticed. that gives you a big clue as to the, what really is driving all of existence. It's consciousness. And two particles, it doesn't matter how far apart they are, they could still be entangled. They still have a connectivity. Even if these particles now lie in different galaxies, they can still be intertangled. And it's the same thing with beings, and there's a reason for this. There is a reason for it. And again, it's reflected in that as above, so below. We think about DNA, and DNA is kind of like programming. It's something that can be changed all along. It's not fixed and finite. We inherit our DNA, but we can override it. And that's the beauty of being a creator, is that we have the ability to overwrite that which we've been given. And right now we're in a process of righting a lot of the wrongs that have been done to our DNA by the controllers throughout many different incarnations.
Mm-hmm. And definitely looking at that as a blessing and an opportunity to go ahead and help rectify things that have been done to our lineage that need to be corrected. Many people have been chosen to heal that DNA lineage, and it can be quite confusing. So when I talk to people that feel that's part of what they are to do, I tell them just focus on you, because when you are healing yourself, this translation already goes to your children, your grandchildren, and it automatically goes to anyone coming after you. So just focus on you if you feel you've been called to do this.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating because when we look at this, and again, if you're one that likes to look at things and see patterns, you can see that there's a pattern that develops. And sure, this is the physical body, yet the DNA actually does exist in the energy bodies as well. And this is, again, part of the great experiment, because what's going on is truly a great experiment of Source. Mm-hmm. Source is having a huge experiment. And it's an experiment in basically trying to experience all that Source has created and is constantly co-creating with its co-creators, because Source is in all of us as well. And we could trace these lineages on back. In a way, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing it in the inverse, and I'm looking at it thinking this is very much like cellular mitosis. And again, this is the fractal nature that we find ourselves in. We've had many incarnations, and yet we are not even a singular entity. That's the big thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. I think the vast majority don't understand, and honestly, I didn't understand. And I'm still in the process of understanding, because it's so mind-blowing. We're not a singular identity. We're not a singular being. We are... We've picked up a lot along the way, let's just say, and we are fractals again, and we're ever changing fractals. Every experience we have changes us again a little bit, and is just increasing our uniqueness, which is beautiful. So again, when we look at these patterns that we see in nature, and we think in terms of, again, cellular mitosis, which is basically cellular division, this is how the universe is. Every single universe is but a cell in something bigger. So the creator of this universe is taking part in that grand experiment. When we look to ourselves, and we have 10 times the amount of things living in us than our own cells, we are therefore a universe unto all these beings, our microbiome. And yet every single human and every single animal is just a cell in Mother Earth, and Mother Earth is just a cell in something bigger. And the same thing with our entire solar system. The relationship between a solar system and an atom, for instance, they kind of mirror each other. And again, every single universe is nothing but just one tiny little cell. So when we were talking about this quantum entanglement, how all things are entangled, just think of it from a cellular mitosis point of view. At first, you have the sperm going into the egg, and then the magic starts to happen, and it divides. And it goes through these different stages. And yet, each cell is, again, a fractal because it maintains the information of the whole. And eventually, the cells become specific cells according to the job they're going to do, whether they're, cells in the heart, cells in the lungs, cells in the kidneys, etc. They all take a specificity to them at some point. But again, it's that mitosis, it's that knowledge of the whole that's contained. Each one of us has all that knowledge. We have also all the knowledge. We have the ability to tap into all the knowledge of those that have gone before us. So when you're looking at your parents, you see you here, you could view it in verse and think about the cells splitting off. And each one is here, a unique individual, or at least apparently a unique individual. Well, it is a unique individual because, again, there's all these different proportions to the recipe, so to speak. Each one of us, unique experiences bring about a unique individual, but yet everything that's in that that individual is contained in the others to a degree, and we could tap into. And Cindy did this for me when I was building the porch. She's like, well, both your grandpas were handy guys. And, my one grandpa on my mom's side, he was a diesel mechanic and very, very, very good with his hands. The other grandpa was a farmer. And so it was interesting. She was like, just tap into them. So I was thinking about them. Even though I never met them, they both died about 6 years before I was born. I could still tap into them. I could still tap into their energies, and they could still guide me. And in fact, when I was trying to decide on how to progress, where I should start with a particular phase, she came through with, well, your grandpa's saying, think about it logically and how it's going to progress. Remember?
Yeah, and do as much as you can in one spot.
In one spot. Stay in the one spot. Do all you could in one spot, then move to another, is what he said. And it was wise. And that definitely helped me with the project. So we could tap into that. That's something we could all do. It's just a matter of working on that. So this is the magic. This is also why we have, again, that quantum entanglement. Because ultimately, everything that was one cell. It's just been dividing. It's going through a cellular mitosis on the biggest level that you can imagine. And eventually gives birth to a new entity, which becomes its own universe and then its own creator God, ultimately.
Right. So, within Mike is all the information that's been lived in his ancestors. And it's like, who do you want to learn from? What do you want to learn? And sit and focus on that and think about it. Do you actually have to have a being and know them in mind? No, because the cells, the energy, the bodies, the intelligence, it already knows. So that's the only part you need to understand, is that there's a force that's much bigger and brighter, that is going to bring in all this information for you if and when you ask.
Absolutely. And again, that fractal nature, all we got to do is look out and look within. The cosmic web interconnects all these individual galaxies, groups, and star clusters by filaments of dark matter surrounding large, underdense voids. The human brain neural network, it's the same thing connecting the neurons. This is the as above, so below. And we could look to the stars in the sky, and they are individual beings. One was twinkling, talking to us last night so brilliantly. Each one of them is a different class, a different size, different energy signatures. Yet each one of them, in one sense, is just simply a cell. And yet, think about, again, how much life that's in your body, trillions of singular entities all living together in your body that are not you, and yet you're the universe to them. Think about how much life a star supports. Now, we're told we have 8 or 9 planets, depending on if you classify Pluto as a planet. But the reality is there are many other planets out there. And what we've gotten is there's about 40. Many of them are in 4th density, just slightly at a slightly higher vibrational frequency than what we are at. And many will become visible within the normal lifespan of so many of us that are here right now. And that's amazing to think that we're going to be all of a sudden looking and seeing new planets popping into being. They've been there the whole time. And there are many beings on these planets that are very advanced, and they've been watching us because they are more spiritually advanced to where they can see us and know that we're here. And yet, of course, they are wise enough to not interfere. Of course, there are those, as we know, we've talked about those that do interfere and do try to control this knowledge, don't want this knowledge getting out. So as we progress, we support more life. This is just part of being a creator. It's all about creating new life and supporting new life. And again, through that fractal pattern that we see, you can see the brain cells and galaxies. You can see the death of a star and the birth of a cell, and the reflection of them both. And you can look into the eye of somebody and see the entirety of a singular universe, or a nebula is so reflective of the iris. So we are a universe. We're expressing itself as a human for a little while. But this is not the entirety of us. So you might look in the mirror and say, whatever, I'm a 35-year-old male, I'm 6'1", 180 pounds, yeah, I'm of whatever the ethnicity is, but yeah, that's just a tiny, tiny portion of who you are. You are something so much bigger. As I look at a lizard that was just climbing the fence, made it to the top, and then fell all the way back down to the bottom, and he's going to go again. This is life, and it's beautiful. There is nothing to be really afraid of ultimately, because this is a temporary experience. Even though, yes, we are stepping into a dark times. In many ways, again, this is perhaps July or June of 1939, and we might be actually living in Poland and not realize that in only a few months' time we're going to be overrun, and war is going to be the only thing we're thinking of is surviving a war instead of pondering the great mysteries. But again, we are here in order to learn from this, and we don't end when the body ends. We do not end when the body ends. You could look at the human placenta and the tree of life and see that reflection. And this is something that's always been one for Cindy to ponder.
Oh yeah, I mean I love this one. This one's my favorite because we all know about the tree of life and we all know what it looks like. And then you look at the placenta of a newborn baby, and there you go. You have the tree of life, and our ancestors hold all of this information. They pass it down to us from from lineage to lineage. And we've gone through a time where all of this was so forgotten. But the beauty of things right now is that it's all being remembered as it should. So the power of all is just right there in front of us.
Again, it's right there in the Bible. Now, this is where, if you want to go deep enough, you can find the truths in the Bible. But you got to go deep. You can't look at it superficially. Superficial is for the masses, and it's even written that Yeshua taught in parables for the masses, but spoke plainly to the inner circle. Mm-hmm. Again, sharing the knowledge, and he's spoken plainly to us. He's spoken plainly to others, in which it all depends on what you're ready for. Well, and also what you can say, because again, the control grid out there was there when he was here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really big, then that's why many times he had to speak in parables, and that's why, we have to put things out there the way we put out there, because if you speak plainly, that's not going to benefit the controllers, and they are called controllers for a reason. They control everything, and that's why you really have to go around certain things to get to the truth.
So this is something that really hit me just because of what Cindy had observed. And in medical Qigong and the studies that I've done in medical Qigong, we come over the Hun and the Po. And this is probably not going to be accurate. And we could go into more detail. But there was, see, we have a little grave for our Zeke. And Zeke's been gone now for a couple months. And, you know, he was like my best friend for a long time and a wonderful, wonderful companion. And when he passed, we put him in the backyard and have a little, grave for him. So it's interesting, too, because at certain times, like Sassy will go and just sit by it, Rama always, and Sita at times, too. It's like at certain times, he's more there. Now, you had said that there were elementals that were leaving the body now. Yes. Because the elementals, because the body is breaking down now. It's breaking down and it's giving off its energy. And again, this is where we are not even closely a singular entity. We're a collection of different intelligences. And so the Hun and the Po, this is just part of it. Every living human. So that, I can see where this is, it's not totally accurate. Again, it's Wikipedia. Every human basically gets 3 Hun, which you can view the Hun as guides. And this is again in Taoist philosophy, medical Qigong, TCM, traditional Chinese medical theory. This is kind of part of this description of what is a soul in the first place. Well, there's these 3 Hun spirits, which again you could view as kind of like angels, protective spirits. You could view them as spirit guides. Now they're said to reside in the liver, which is interesting. And so when we drink too much, they'll leave the liver and they'll leave us. And then think about it. If you drink too much, maybe you do things that you wouldn't normally do. Well, this would be the explanation from a medical Qigong standpoint. And then a Taoist philosophy, the Hun can't stand it when there's too much alcohol or other sorts of chemical stimulants and just the opposite, chemical depressants in so many ways. They leave the body temporarily and they hang around. And then we're just ruled by the Po. Now, the Po, every single human, when a human's born, you have the eternal soul, you have the 3 Hun that join it in the journey, and you have 7 Po spirits which come from the earth. The 7 Po spirits go back to the earth when the body decays and dies. And that's actually, the Po is, and Cindy didn't really know this, but what she was describing with these elemental energies leaving Zeke's body is exactly what is taught in medical Qigong and in Taoist philosophy. Those are the Po. The 7 Po spirits go back to the earth. They're only, both these groups, the Hun and the Po, are here for the ride. And the Po, again, are more about, and they can also relate to everything that would be ultimately carnal in some ways. The lust of life, the appreciation of food, of passion, of everything in this world. It kind of comes from the Po side of things. And they can also, if they're dominant, then we can become a very, very materialistic person, a very, very sensual person, without necessarily the balanced spiritual aspect of the Hun. So I just thought this was fascinating because she was watching these elementals, and I had said to her, I keep seeing things over there, and I keep feeling, and also it was interesting too because there's we have a solar light that's there, and it's the brightest one, and it's been extra bright the last few weeks, and I have been able to see Zeke at times. I see him out of the corner of my eye, and I'll think, oh, there's Rama or Sita. And then when I look straight on, he's no longer there, because all of them were black dogs.
Right. And I love the solar light because it's in a place where it really doesn't get that much sun, but it's the brightest one. That's real exciting. And then a family member sent me a little video of his solar lights at night, and I don't think they're supposed to twinkle, but they are sure twinkling at him. And it doesn't surprise me that he would have those kind of entities around him to bring him some form of entertainment. So that was really cool.
So you can see different people translating it slightly different. Here you see this one translation of the Hun, the soul, that part of the soul which goes to heaven, is able to leave the body, carrying with it an appearance of physical form. Soul, the spiritual part of man that ascends to heaven, that's contrasted with the wits. And then the Po is that which goes down into the earth at death, and it is basically broken down and will be used in another being at some point. Now, the way I view it is that the Po are elemental beings. These are elementals. We all have elementals that basically regulate all the operations of our body. And there are several elementals, and Cindy can see them. When I do my standing Qigong, she can see them, and they appear, she calls them fishies. Yeah. They're like shimmering lights, and they work on areas that I need work on. And I've done a lot of damage to my hands over the years with a lot of physical labor and things, and certain joints, plus weightlifting. So she sees them on certain areas. And also, from a past life, I was run through in my left kidney, and she'll always see them working on that, even though that's past life related. I had visions and memories of it clearly, and been able through the meditations to discover a lot as far as the past lives. And, one of the things now I wanted to get into, and here I've been dying to touch more on this, and really the medical Qigong books that we have so much more information. Mm-hmm. And we might have to buy the other 3 if we could find them, because we have 2 of the 5. Each one is, again, about 800 pages. It's just so jam-packed with great info and great detail. But this I thought is fascinating. So you have the Yuan Xuan, which is the eternal soul part, but as I perceive it, the Hun are more like our guides, angels, and the Po, again, are elemental beings. I just thought it was so fascinating that Cindy could see them and detect them, and they were leaving Zeke's body like 2 months after he had passed. So that I thought was fascinating.
Right. Well, and Sassy was walking around the area, and she was talking to different entities, but she also could sense that it was from Zeke. So, it's all very interesting when we get to watch these natural life occurrences that are not necessarily in front of your 2 eyes, but you can see it in different ways on different dimensions.
And we, again, are complex beings. We're really complex beings. And I don't think people understand exactly what consciousness is. And we're still uncovering it too. And every day I'm blown away. I feel so incredibly thankful and blessed that we have been brought together, Cindy and I, because, there's so many things. Since a little kid, I remember the thought went through my head as a little kid that, I could face death. I won't be afraid of death. I just want to know all the answers before I die. I want to know all the mysteries as a little kid. I mean, I was always hungry for this. But then again, my Rahu, where it is.
It definitely has a hunger for you to want to understand all that there is. And normally it wouldn't be very controlled, but luckily he does have his Rahu with his Jupiter, and that brings about some control. Otherwise he might go off a cliff trying to learn everything. So
yeah, and it's in the
fifth house.
Yeah, 5th house, which is all
it's all about your creativity and education.
Yeah, it's all about like going deep into the mysteries.
Mysteries, very deep, yes, and it is. It's well because Jupiter is expansion. So you put Jupiter in a place where there's education and creativity, and you have Rahu that's just kind of expands the expansion.
Yeah, Rahu is like insatiability.
Yes.
So for me, it's all that insatiable quest for complete gnosis, and that's always been what's driven me my entire life. So as you see, you have source, and then there are what he has in this diagram is other levels, and I would put in there archetypes. Is what I feel. There are many archetypes out there too, and then it breaks down into these different soul groups, oversouls, souls, and then soul extension, and we could think of these as individual lives. Yet, oh, it's so much more complicated than this. It really is. But yet at the same time, it's beautiful. Everything, again, when you're viewing this, even on the soul level, think quantum entanglement. Think quantum entanglement, because we were all one in source. We were all one in source. We could tap into everything. Cindy is such an amazing person in that I have not found any person yet that we've thought of that she hasn't been able to contact on the other side. Why? Because of the quantum entanglement. And this is what we're going to have when we get into the silver and gold age. Everybody's going to have abilities like Cindy. And that's the beauty of this. You don't need a freaking chip. They could take the chips and
chip it where the chips don't shine.
Yes, and the only chips we should be taking in are those dipped in salsa and guac.
Yes, and some cheese maybe.
Yes, queso's good. So it's the same thing on the soul level. The same thing we see going on, the cellular mitosis, so to speak, the expansion and the containing. Again, it's a fractal. So all the knowledge, all the information, this is why we have the Akashic records. And it's not even that we have to kind of go anywhere to get to the Akashic records, because everything is within our consciousness anyway.
Well, one of the things the guides told me a while ago, and it never really left me, is we were speaking, they were talking to me about the veil. Everyone speaks about the veil, but there is no veil. That's the thing. You find expansion and you can see more. Everything is right here, right now.
It's as if we've been basically in a dimly lit room, and the room is so dimly lit we can't see the walls. And we think we're viewing everything. And then all of a sudden the light turns on, and we see that we're not in a room at all. We're in this limitless expanse with innumerable co-inhabitants that were there the entire time.
Right. And when it comes to judging other people and their actions, really we're all in this experience together, and you can say we're just kind of all we're walking each other home from school.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I found was fascinating, because as I've gone deeper and with Cindy's help gotten some clarity, I mean, I've seen that I've had, and I've gotten from other psychics too, which I hadn't told Cindy, that I've had certain lives. I've had 2 lives that I know of as a Templar, and part of the reason why I really get worked up when it comes to the church is because of basically meeting my demise at the hands of them. What was I doing? I was doing the same thing I'm doing now. I was trying to tell people, what the real story is, because again, like when it comes to Yeshua, he came to teach Ascension and the Ascension mysteries. He came to enlighten us and get us ready to step out of the Dark Age, right in the thick of the Dark Age. It wasn't about a blood sacrifice. Again, that's them rewriting the story and steering the narrative in a way they want to steer it. This is what they always do. And so, he was married to Mary Magdalene. He did have 5 kids. We know through some, what was it, Da Vinci Code, I think, talked about this, and maybe not in perfect agreement with what we have uncovered, but yet the same basic theory. And people that were going against the official narrative could be executed, and often were. And so, I mean, I could still see kind of a castle room up high in a tower where they executed me, and Cindy saw the execution too. And as I've shared, I've also had this elemental, the body elemental, working on the left kidney, and I've had visions of being run through and on through the left kidney, somebody from behind that I don't even see. So all these things come through, but I've also had visions of being on a Tibetan plateau right on the border with Nepal, and basically almost every other incarnation has been spent basically being a monk to recover and to not get too deeply intertwined into the dark emotions from being from fighting the system and then being done away with by the system time and time again. So in my last incarnation that we uncovered, I was born March 18th, 1844, and in a small town close to St. Petersburg, Russia, and died June 21st, 1908, also in Russia. And the thing that was interesting is what came up last night was that, and I always had a question too, because I know I had been involved in the Golden Dawn in a previous incarnation, and when we channeled Aleister Crowley, he made reference to knowing me, and he was actually chiding me when we were trying to get the house and difficulties were coming up. He said, basically, come on, you know what to do. And then we put out our focus and we got the house done. How could this be? Because the person, the Russian incarnation, as far as I know, never met Crowley and never came to the U.S. And in fact, I met Crowley in the U.S. in Louisiana. So in that particular incarnation, it's just, how could this possibly be? And then realized that incarnation, died in World War II in Europe. Just perplexing. But it's this right here. It's this chart. And it's the fact that we can have incarnations. We can incarnate in more than one place at one time. So when you look at what is truly you, and we talk about the higher self, right? So we're looking up higher. And, again, you could come down and have multiple incarnations going. You might even see another you, a real you, at some period in time during this incarnation.
Well, I call it a soul stream. And you have, say, information going through like a tube or a hose, and it's a lot of information. And then say it comes out like fingers. So you have one being, but several beings coming from the same soul stream, and they all can tap into that amount of information.
And talk more about what we were getting about picking up. Remember how we were talking about our DNA and how our DNA connects us, and then we have, besides these incarnations, we also have our actual family members again. And let's see, there we go. So if we're thinking in terms of this, along with that last chart with incarnations, we can also take on portions of the consciousness of our predecessors.
Oh, yeah, there's that magnetic pull, because you can call it in. And I think this is something that's in some of the mysteries, is how do we get information from those before us if we never met them, we never knew them, we don't know who they are, really what they did. You can sit there and call in your ancestral understanding, and they'll be more than happy to come in and help you, but sometimes you need to figure stuff out yourself, but your ancestors are always there, and it's nothing but a focus, and that focus creates the magnetic pull of information.
And so that incarnation that died during World War II. Now, my dad was in World War II, and at that time he was, in his early 20s. When that incarnation of mine died, the energy from that went into my dad. Yeah. So that it's like a portion of that consciousness. Now it's starting to all make sense. The stuff that we've gotten from Aset, who you would know as Isis, when she was teaching, I really honestly, I didn't understand what she was trying to get across. And I was trying to understand it, but I couldn't understand it. And so when, Cindy and I leave this incarnation, there is a portion of us that can go and reside with Aset. And there's a portion of us that can go and reside with Lakshmi or Vishnu or, really so many others as well. Because, again, we are not just a singular entity, and every single incarnation is totally unique and is just completely unique. And we're always growing. This, again, is that energy can't be created or destroyed. It always is, but it's always going to change. Everything is constantly evolving. So even when we look at the spiral in the time periods, and we see that spiral, we could see the Ouroboros, and I'm going off on some tangents, and I know there's going to be some of you guys that are going to love this, and others that maybe are going to get a little lost. When you look to Ouroboros, the snake or the serpent or the dragon that is eating itself, this is a symbol that we see all around the world again. But in reality, in many ways it's time, but it's more of a spiral is really what it should be represented. And yeah, that's not it. Let's see. Spiral, fractal.
And when I started being able to see the energies, everything that came out of my hands was a spiral, and this is before I ran into all of this information. So it is just fun to have these understandings and then later run into the information, because it does build confidence. And I know some other channels, and they're just very, very sweet, and we talk. And one thing when you do channel energy and information is you have almost this constant insecurity about yourself. So confirmations become very, very important. And I'm not sure, but it seems like across the board, that's just some aspect of us that we hold on to, that uncertainty. But then you get these confirmations and it's like, wow.
Every time we come back to the same sort of period, same sort of time, it has the same tendencies, but it is completely unique. This time through the Kali Yuga and leaving the Kali Yuga is completely unique. And they were sharing with us last night, the Galactic Fed came through again. And, they know what they're going to do because they've done this thousands of times. And yet each time is a unique version. So is it set in stone? No. Is there going to be a World War III? Yes. Because they are so entrenched and they have everything in place for it. So this is what we need to get ready for. Of course, we don't want it, but this is also how we know we're at that very end phase, and we're going to be stepping out of the Kali Yuga as well. Every time is totally unique. Nothing is totally set in stone, but then there's certain tendencies, and there's certain generalities that we will go through, but the specifics of the situation are things that we could control, and our reaction to the situation is, again, something we can control. And this is all about learning. We're learning. I mean, the thing to grasp is that not only are we truly eternal, we're always changing, and we could always become a better version of ourselves, and we don't even really comprehend the expansiveness of each one of us.
I mean, there's just so much information to go through, and it is our pleasure and our honor and our right to explore these things and understand them in ways that kind of tickle our consciousness, that raise our spidey senses. These are all things that are just really incredible and amazing and fun to ponder. Life is so interesting, how simple it can be yet so complex. It's the simplicity part of it that I really enjoy, when you can take so much information but you can make something so simple out of it.
Absolutely. So, you are a creator. That's the bottom line. You are a creator, and someday in the future you may be the creator on a par with the creator of this universe, as ultimately, we are just basically learning as we go, and it's all one big learning experience ultimately.
Yep. We're all just walking each other home.
Yes. And as always, guys, thank you for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. We couldn't do it without your support there in these times. And use coupon code EEA. Check out Medicinal Foods. They are great people who understand consciousness, and they are really all about just helping others. When we went into this with them, they made it known they don't really care about the money. It's not about the money. They just want to, help others get as healthy as possible, so we can expand our consciousness and take our power back. And so I just wanted to share that. The good people, coupon code EEA, does support the channel as well. And do check out Evolutionary Energy Arts. At some point we'll update it. We have a lot more testimonials to add. If you need to make an appointment, it's evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com. And again, we could, check out things like your guides, communicate with your guides, look at even sometimes things like past lives come through. Most definitely give you guidance as far as recommendations with practice, how to make a good practice, and, how to develop your own abilities as well. God bless. Namaste.
Namaste.